Wednesday's obviously big story from the circumference of Studio Z. Where to begin? Before 5 a.m. Eastern time when our Adrian Wojnarowski and Chris Haynes were tweeting, the contours of the trade were in place, essentially. Kawhi Leonard for Toronto's DeMar DeRozan. But there are so many open questions and threads to this story after Leonard's nearly full year in effective exile away from the Spurs, beginning with Chris Haynes reporting that Leonard does not want to go to Toronto, which becomes even more focused when DeRozan's Instagram includes his pithy review of his departure from Toronto. Quote, be told one thing, and outcome another. Can't trust him. Ain't no loyalty in this game. Sell you out quick for a little bit of nothing. This from the four-time Raptor All-Star, the all-time franchise leader in games, in points, in field goals, in free throws. In short, he is the franchise cornerstone. Traded for a guy entering his walk year, whose health was one of the major subplots of last year's NBA campaign. That was all happening while DeRozan was leading Toronto to the #1 seed in the East. Here's the full trade now. Leonard and Danny Green to Toronto. DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a protected first-round pick going to San Antonio. And we're going to Windy World. Brian Windhorst is going to begin deconstructing this. Is anybody happy in this trade?
You know, Bob, we're going to have to wait probably a year or so to really know if there's a winner or loser here, because this is one of the more bizarre star trades I've seen in the last 15 years covering the NBA, because we don't know about Kawhi Leonard's health. That's a really important factor here. Is he going to be the same player he was 2 years ago when he may have been able to lead an upset of the Warriors in the playoffs? Or is he going to be diminished somewhat? Will he stay in Toronto? Will DeMar DeRozan be a good fit and continue the Spurs level of competitiveness? This is going to be one that's going to be difficult to call today. Yeah. What I will say is this. The Raptors got a really good discount here, and they leveraged this trade, and they got a way to find a way to accept this risk. And this could elevate them to the top team in the Eastern Conference. They are really good if Kawhi Leonard is himself.
Now, you talk about his health. You would think, though, the Raptors, certainly there was a physical involved, I would think, and it was a rigorous one. So you still think there may be a question here?
There hasn't been a physical yet.
No.
Kawhi Leonard has 48 hours, I believe, to report. But then he potentially could, have that extended. It's possible, Bob, that the Raptors would waive the physical here because they are really interested in just getting Kawhi on their roster, even if that means taking a gamble. That is the next layer of this trade. We think it's done. They had a conversation and cleared it with the league today. The teams put out press releases. Greg Popovich is having a press conference. But we're not 100% sure this is going to go through. But obviously the Raptors have had to vet this. They knew that there's a possibility that Kawhi may not show up right away.
All right, this is bizarro world to say the least, Wendy. All right, it even gets stranger. Let's put up on the screen the goodbye relative tweets that the Spurs put out for Danny Green. In the same time, they were also saying thank you to Kawhi Leonard. And the conspiracy theorists on the internet, and Lord knows there are a few dozen of those out there on their sofa. Hey, look at that big font for Danny Green. Look at that tiny little font for Kawhi Leonard. And Tom Haberstroh points out on Twitter that the official release from the Spurs omits Kawhi's finals MVP, his All-Star appearances, Defensive Player of the Year, his 2014 ring. Everyone is saying, boy, the Spurs are just brushing him to the side.
Yeah, there's no love lost here. This was a really bad breakup. I think the Spurs handled this with some level of maturity. I've seen it go worse. Let's go back to 2010 with Dan Gilbert as being the Class A example of that. But this was no love lost here, not only between the Spurs and front office and Kawhi Leonard, but his own teammates. And that's why we all knew that this eventually was going to happen, whether it was going to happen today or in August or in September, that Kawhi and the Spurs were done. And this is not something that's happened in San Antonio before. They have been immune from this. And how they handle this is really going to affect them as a franchise. They have elected, Bob, to trade for a player who can help them maintain some level of competitiveness. They elected not to wait for prospect players. That is a bit of a controversial decision. Some other people in this situation would have gone for more younger players and more draft picks. So we'll see. This is not part of the Spurs book. They've written many chapters. There's a gospel out there. This is outside their normal operations.
So the book of intrigue is only in the second or third chapter, and we don't even know if there's, well, you say no physical. We're waiting to see, is it official? Well, yeah, we think so. Brian Windhorst, thanks as always.